John O'Brien here doing a little bit of coach talk. And in the wildlife industry, I'm supposed to have, a deer or some big fancy logo in the background and have a great professional looking situation. And we can do that at times, but tonight's not one of those times. Sunday night, got a little bit of time on my hands. I tend to not follow a lot on social media this time of year because I've been living in the fields doing real life meaningful research. That being said, I do see little topics that come up on occasion, and I sometimes struggle with how to answer in social media because my answers are should never be, a page or two, right? They should be like books. Okay, I'm kind of joking. But anyway, it's hard to like give short little answers on some of these topics. But the topic today is going to be Roundup Ready alfalfa compared to conventional alfalfa. We've shot content in the past. We chime in on it. Here's my real life answers to that. So many people in the wildlife industry see what they see, think what they think, don't always understand what they're looking at. So again, yes, deer can and will eat Roundup Ready alfalfa, but if you put a lot of different genetics side by side by side, nothing's 100% as well, right? I could have Roundup Ready alfalfa varieties next to uh, earlier dormancy alfalfa, next to a multi-leaf alfalfa, next to a low lignin alfalfa, next to a higher sugar alfalfa. And again, it's all about benchmarking, repetitions, different locations, as many years and repetitions of trials as possible. So when I speak, for example, in my library, I have over 170,000 forage samples I've taken in my life. Not five, not 10, not 20, not 100, 170,000. So when I see stuff, I don't miss much. I see anomalies. I spot little things that most people wouldn't see. And yet, when I'm testing forages, which we got a number of different alfalfas out there in my research blocks right now, weather can be a factor, soil type could be a factor, the stage of maturity is a factor. Because even out in my Watertown Seed Extreme research blocks, four different alfalfas are out there right now. They're all different genetics. They all mature slightly different. They all have different growth habits. That's why we need to sample with as many repetitions, measure. But let's go back to like that Roundup Ready alfalfa talk. The biggest issue isn't necessarily the trait. It's more or less when you're actually spraying Roundup on your Roundup Ready alfalfa. And my suggestion is you want to plant Roundup Ready alfalfa. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but if you do, you don't have to spray it with Roundup. The problem with spraying with Roundup, why I help bring generic Roundup in the United States, and yet I do not use the Roundup unless it's emergency situations, is because the surfactant in the Roundups have microbial issues that will kill your soil biology. And when we don't have soil biology, we don't have good nutrient uptake. When we don't have good nutrient uptake, we don't have as much desirability. There's many factors that come in desirability. I wrote a book on that as well. But sugar, let's just stick with mainly sugar in this discussion. Um, there's a reason why some plants are higher in sugar than others. And so, um, so if you're going to be planting alfalfa and you insist on doing the Roundup Ready alfalfa, I always ask guys, I can sell a lot of different varieties of Roundup Ready alfalfa, but why? Going back a number of years ago out to the Giro farm, we have a huge amount of deer numbers. We have a lot of different plots we had back then, and yet I planted an acre and a half of alfalfa to prove a point to me even though I've seen it, heard it, observed it, larger scale, selling Roundup Ready alfalfa to my farmer clients in deer country and seeing limited browse compared to other varieties in real life, everyday circumstances, I still did it. And guess what? I hardly seen deer go to that alfalfa. Could that same variety of alfalfa planted on your property deer eat? Yes, because maybe that's the most desirable thing on your property at the time. I probably have a lot of other options. I should always have other options, at different times of year, right? And so again, what alfalfa should you plant? Well, there's a reason why we're selling multi-max alfalfa that's got three different varieties. It handles grazing pressure better. We don't want all of our alfalfas to have the same dormancy. I want some alfalfas to have the ability to make it through the winter, but don't go dormant as early. Stop and think about it. Yes, stop and think about staggered genetics for alfalfas, and also think about this concept. We've talked about that for many years. There's been another company that's also in the farming world, nutrition world, which is where I've been from in my life, that also has done some trials to prove this, and I'm going to prove it again, and we sell it. But if you plant different genetics, doesn't forages always compete for sunlight? So if you got a variety that actually tends to grow a little taller, won't the varieties that tend to not grow as tall grow taller? End result being higher yield when you plant multiple varieties of alfalfa together. Guess what? The wildlife industry, 3, 4 years from now, you're going to see it all over there, right? Because you've been watching my video. But it's true. And then so again, we got that option out there. But back to Roundup Ready alfalfa again. So when you plant Roundup Ready alfalfa, and you have a choice to make, if you're going to spray with glyphosate, what weeds does glyphosate kill anymore? I've seen some comments like Roundup Ready alfalfa is not as attractive because of this or because of that. But again, if we plant side by sides out there with the same fertilizations, planting dates, and all that kind of stuff, um, at the same year, right? Um, we're going to end up seeing more of a desirability, typically, statistically, on all these other varieties besides Roundup Ready alfalfa. Um, Again, if you're spraying Roundup on that alfalfa, and if you're using Basagran or Butyric 200 clethodim, other alternative herbicides, Imox, Pursuit on those other alfalfas. Here's another thing that comes into play when some people say, "Well, my deer they really love Roundup Ready alfalfa." Well, but what else is on your neighbor's land? What other do you have alfalfa other places? Is it new seeding versus old seeding? What crop is it? What time of year? There's a lot of factors there. So when people chime in on Roundup Ready alfalfa, most people don't know what they don't know. And again, stay tuned because even though I got a lot of varieties of alfalfa out there, I even got blended alfalfas out in the countryside. We will be doing a fall seeding with 4 varieties of alfalfa with Roundup Ready alfalfa, and we'll give you real life data. We'll give you your observations. We'll give you um, perspective. And again, it can't be just one growing season, right? We need to have multiple growing seasons, multiple repetitions. That's why I've been doing research my whole career and at some of our main research blocks, especially the Columbus, Wisconsin research. We're in year, I believe, 13. And every year we get more statistical confidence in whatever we're planting, visual observations, data points, and that. And again, backing up to Roundup Ready alfalfa versus conventional alfalfas, um, genetics makes a difference. There's some varieties of alfalfa that tolerate sandier ground better. There's some that tolerate insect pressures because the concepts, especially on insects, especially on alfalfa, is insects tend to attack less healthy plants. And so if you got a variety of alfalfa that's not tolerating a extended period of wet as well, or extended period of dry as well, or cold, they're going to be less uh, lower in sugar typically. And so as a result, the insects should be more apt to attack those plants. And then, of course, your visual observations can be, hey, I mean, deer are loving my Roundup alfalfa versus another variety. But then the question I always ask is, what else are you planting? What kind of genetics? How did you fertilize? Because again, everybody looks and they say, hey, this is my soil sample says, this is what I need to do. But very few, my observations are very few people that are watching this now or that I've talked in the past put enough fertilization down in your alfalfa. So as far as like attractiveness too, um, Roundup Ready alfalfas may or may not yield more. They may or may not be comparable in bricks. They may or may not be comparable in plant nutrients and on the protein side, the energy side, the effective fiber side, and all that. But then again, it goes back to, as I've said once before, but did you apply any glyphosate to that Roundup and if ready alfalfa? And so if you did, and you're sampling these forages with more than one repetition, um, you're going to tend to see about 0.10% lower in plant calcium. It could be higher, it could be 0.20. And most of you guys are like, what does that mean? Well, I mean, it could be 5, 10% lower in calcium. And to the average person, maybe that doesn't really mean a lot. but it can as far as plant protein levels. So when we do this trial, going into trials, you're not supposed to have an expectation. You're not supposed to have pre-trial predictions. But I can't help it. I've looked at enough forage samples in my life where I tend to have a pretty good idea how they're going to test on that, but you still let the research play out. Um, Another little comment is I used to do nutrition work for another nutritionist that worked with conventional farmers and organic and also non-GMO natural farmers. And when he sent in those forage samples and he got the results back, he'd forward them on to me. I go on the computer to do my magic to balance the diets. And almost every time or a lot of times I would ask him is like, is this guy here? He must be organic or a natural client. And especially in some cases, I'm like, this guy is on a liquid program and he's organic or natural, right? And Rick will be like, yep, how do you know? And again, the samples don't lie. And there's a strong correlation for high elevated plant nutrient concentrations when you're using less traded hybrids, varieties, everything from alfalfa to corn to soybeans, etc. It's just the way it is, and that's why when guys are using non Roundup corns, and they switch to conventional, you generally these guys are reporting 2 to 12 pounds of milk increase. And again, if you're talking about meat production in there, you do have a better efficiency, and there's reasons for it. And again, so guys out there watching like, well, I'll plant some Roundup Ready Alfalfa, do a side by side trial, and I'll learn a lot. Well, you will learn a little bit, right? But again, it's all about repetitions. And so, in this video right here, I guess at least is giving you some food for thought. If anybody ever wants to pick my brain on anything from alfalfa, annual clovers, perennial clovers, other legumes, alternative legumes, this is my world of research. This is my career. We're year 35 into doing this full time, day by day, year after year. And animals don't lie, and production content, creating content doesn't mean that it's the gospel, um, and that's where the sad part of the wildlife industry is. There's very few people that have actually are doing forage research and have lived the walk the walk. So many people just want to talk the talk and try to just mainly peddle product. And so here there's a little video for you guys. Food for thought. And stay tuned for more future content that we'll be creating here this year. Have a great evening.